Good evening, everyone. System Chalk here with the 29th episode of the Dancer Legacy for Cultist Simulator. I'm recording this during a sort of nationwide outage of my internet service provider. This has been going on almost for 24 hours now. And the only reason I'm mentioning that is if you have left a comment and I've not replied, it's not because I'm mad. Usually. No, it's nothing personal, but I have not been able to respond to things. I haven't been able to see anything on the internet for the past 24 hours. And it's also possible that this may affect the save file, given the way that the Steam cloud works. So, as always, I have my contingencies. I've got a copy, or I'll have a copy of this saved. But of course, there's always the risk that there's, an upload doesn't work properly. And I wanted to just try and lay a little bit of groundwork for that. But I figured I might as well make the most of the time and move on. My apologies for the throat clearings. I'll try and keep those to a minimum. So we've got quite a few new entries into our library. I think we're finishing the translation of, it's Orchid Transfigurations, and then we will, yes. A community favorite. So we'll finish the translations as we were doing before. We've successfully gotten past the Watchers now. Excuse me. Why did we bring Lantern? Oh yeah, actually, so one thing I can't remember from the previous video was talking about the idea of sort of priority lores and that. So the idea that, well, you know what, I'll talk about it after we're done unpausing, because it's likely I probably did return back to that topic, and then I can just kind of briefly summarize. We're continuing to spam the white door, and everything else kind of seems to be where it needs to be. We are eventually going to have to deal with evidence against us, but I'm not going to panic too much about it. Okay, so one of the things, if I didn't finish the idea, because it did occur to me in the previous video that I'd started talking about it and then I just got off on another tangent, but basically, even though the Edge, in terms of an absolute number, is outdoing Moth is chosen above it, and the normal things that you would think of in terms of where it would go. So if it's alphabetical order, well, obviously E is going to be closer to the top. Knock is kind of special because it seems to be this absorbing state, so maybe that. But like, again, in terms of where you'd sort of naturally think about putting, variable names or orderings or things like that, it's possible. I suppose one way I could check it would be if there was a situation where there was a Moth way and an Edge way every single time Moth activated before the Edge. In that case, that might sort of talk about variable placement. But again, that might just be a choice as well. It's kind of hard to piece those things out. And again, it's just one of these little details as far as lore where it's usually the way I engage with the game. I sort of debated once upon a time of like sitting down, like this is partly just an excuse for me to actually sit down and like really give a proper account of what's going on in the game. And I was like, well, what about a lore video? Like, would that be possible? And like, my intention would be not just to kind of consult the game, but also take a look at the Discord, get some people's opinions on certain things and move on. And I think that some people are doing this on YouTube, but I also feel like the game is sort of intended to allow people to kind of explore the material on their own. And there's also a lot to do. So like, I don't want to ruin the mystery for anybody on doing that. Now, of course, now there's with the idea of like doing a lore video, I'm sure there'll be probably a couple comments like, oh, I'd love to see a lore video from you. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe one day in the future. But just to give you an idea in terms of like, I don't know, where I try and think, and this is a little bit like how I work in the real world too. So, if I read something inside of a book, it's going to give me sort of an account of what's going on. So, I think we talked about Elder Scrolls previously. there's the biography of Berenzia, and then there's the real Berenzia. I've also heard her name as Berenzia. I'm not sure if there's an official statement of that. And within the world, there are sort of these two different interpretations. And, I don't know if, especially because I'm going to speak to an audience who's probably familiar with against world building. I'm not really sure if Bethesda's really sat down and said, this is definitively what happened with Berenzia. You can kind of get the impression that one is an official account and the other one, maybe doesn't have more, it may not be fully truthful, especially once you introduce a book which suggests that another one may not have given you the whole story. It kind of also raises questions about the book that you're hearing that from. Introducing doubt for one book sort of introduces doubts about the intentions of any of the authors, I think. But overall, right, you try and you can sit down and you can pick it apart, and of course you do encounter Berenzia later on in some of the games. Actually, I can't recall if those books. No, actually, I think you encounter them in the game where you first read those books. Now that I think of it, but one way or the other, right? You can start to sit down and talk about it, and maybe some of the fun is thinking for yourself in terms of what happened. I only give that example because it's a really clear example of two contradictory sources inside of a game. So when you read a book inside of a game, generally you sort of say, it's okay, well, we know this has been written down by someone in this world, and chances are, I suppose, depending on how you like to think about things. So when you're talking about old Greek texts, right? And you might have this perspective, well, they were there and we weren't. So unless it's impossible, let's be inclined to sort of believing that they're talking about the truth. So, clearly Herodotus is a lot to swallow if you want to have that point of view. But on the other hand, there can also be, clearly he's still considered the first historian, even though, maybe don't take everything that you see inside of it, or one of the first historians. Yeah, in any case, if you want to be really, really strict on these things, if you read something in a book, it's like, okay, well, this is this person in this world's opinion or their insight on it. And of course, because they live in the world of the secret histories and I don't, I am going to put a little bit more weight to what they say, but they have their own interests. Now, I would also sort of say that in the case of Cultist Simulator, it actually goes a little step further. So when you will read certain books, you'll actually learn a little bit about the authors as well. So when it comes to talking about whether or not Julian Cosley is a big jerk or not, it's going to tell you that these two people had a disagreement. So the contents of the book are written with this knowledge that you have about maybe some of the gossip in terms of this secret world. And I find that kind of interesting. But generally what I tend to find is there's sort of that first level in where the game is either directly telling you something, or at the very least it's giving you those kinds of hints. But I also think some of the fun of Cultist Simulator is very much in the implication. And, we've talked about this on more than a few occasions. The fact that Dr. Redeem is not mortal. Sulochana isn't either, by the way. Although that's maybe a little less surprising depending on how far one goes through through the other legacies. The idea of finding certain influences present in a place tells you a little bit more about them. I think there was a post, somebody had talked about cats being having Grail aspect. I would just say it's well, what else are they gonna get, right? I guess Edge. you might make a small argument for it, but no. I'd say cats are very much Grail creatures. I would think anyway. But But yeah, I mean, so these ones are ones where you sort of need to sit down and say, like, well, number one, you know, you don't need to overthink this stuff. Like sometimes, you know, an influence is an influence, and it's you put it, you fit things inside the world the way that you're interested. But when it comes to implication, and this is, again, I'm probably repeating myself here, but I just wanted to make sure that I got the idea out. Is particularly because I think really anybody can engage with the game this way if they find it interesting. You know, the same way that, you know, some people might be inclined to just check out a book just because it looks interesting in the library. Or some people will definitely know what they want to get. Like they'll, you know, get their reserve off the shelf and they won't look at anything else in there. And both are fine because there's only so much time in which you can read a certain number of books. And sometimes you want to make the most of that time. But, you know, sometimes you also want to be delighted by things that you otherwise wouldn't have checked out. And it's kind of ultimately up to you to kind of decide what level of engagement you're going to have. Also, you know, there's lots of books that I really enjoy. So, you know, I really like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but I don't run a YouTube channel for The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I actually haven't read Mostly Harmless yet, and not for any dislike, I just haven't gotten around to it, even though I've read the other books many years before. In the end, you know, not on the internet, everybody can kind of seem like a super fan, but in the end, I kind of think that the average person is not necessarily going to know everything about a given game. And when it comes to Cultist Simulator, I don't even think the point is necessarily to know everything that's going on. I think very much the process of exploration is as much fun. So if you have sort of found the point where you like to sort of tease around the edges and maybe go on your own little aspirant journey yourself, these are some of the things that I enjoy. Like once you get past the texts, and you know, you can sometimes sit down with a notebook and draw the connections. Something similar to that is what resulted in terms that eventually turned into sort of the network article that I did. Although obviously that doesn't have as much to say about the lore, except offer some thoughts on, you know, things that are already present in discussion. But for me, one of the things that I really do like doing is when you start taking a look at more of the ordering of the world, right? Why is it that Moth seems to override Edge on this expedition, even though the power isn't any higher? You know, some of that has to do with the way the probability works in the game, but I don't think it's just that. Like, I think there might be a very specific priority that's being expressed there. And, you know, there might be some other one. Like, I think one thing that might be interesting is the idea that there's a certain number of Stag Doors riddles. Not every piece of lore is necessarily going to, or like, you know what I mean in terms of lore. Not everyone is going to answer the Stag Doors riddle. Now, is this just because there's a finite number of riddles, you want to balance the game in terms of difficulty? Or is there something very specific about the lore that deals with those riddles where it's basically appropriate? Sorry, I just got a text. I realize I probably should be doing a little more gameplay before I go on these rants. But basically to, you know, once you start running into little details like that, like essentially part of it is just, if this doesn't come naturally, just sort of training yourself to say, it's like, but why is it that way? And then I think the other big impulse that can make Cultist Simulator very fun is when you ask the question, but why is it that way? That comes up a lot. I think this is something we ask a lot as kids. But I think also once we learn that the world is actually quite complicated, and especially in terms of school, like sometimes you have a test to pass when these kinds of questions come up. And not passing tests is very unpleasant. So, you know, you try to avoid that feeling as much as you can. Or maybe it just doesn't hold your interest, or, you know, whatever it is. But not resting with the idea of it just being like, well, somebody else has solved that problem, so, you know, I'll just go and Google it. I'll just go figure it out. Like, taking the time to try and wrestle with it yourself and build up your own understanding of the game, to me at least, can be kind of fun. And I mean, sometimes then, you know, maybe you'll go online and talk with other people and they'll offer another perspective, usually in all capital letters. You you know, it's just another way of going about it. So again, there's tons of stuff that's already present inside of the books and inside of the direct interactions with the game. But I do actually sometimes find that there's some really fun little revelations that you can get just by, you know, hints in terms of why cards have certain aspects or don't have certain aspects, I think is maybe the best way I could put it. Anyways, on the indignities perpetrated by the deceitful fraternity of obliviates. The book is as famous for its near incoherent fury of its tone as for the knowledge it contains, in Latin. I was hoping to make the most of the outage by this is almost certainly going to mess up. Well, you know, let's maybe start filling people back in here. I was trying to make the most of the outage by getting an episode done, but I'm obviously all over the map. Okay, so given the fact that we have... oh, well, actually, this notary is going to get picked up no matter what. Well, we're still going to turn in the commission. I have what the doctor requested. Moth finds light in the dark, and so do I. Alright, so we didn't get an opportunity to show our stuff. That's fine. We don't have the Grail or Edgelore for these works yet. And the Vital Pigment and Rose Pearl Dust, we've already got the painting. So basically this is just a check to see whether or not I have any reason to go painting. I don't, so we'll just do our usual work. The stage awaits hot and clean and bare and bright. If I move the moves and step the steps and do what is required, they'll paint me. I've received the currency of the secret world, and my patron has let tantalizing information slip. So I think that's our first... Nope, not our first silver spin tray. I'm just not paying attention. Alright, so I will send Clovat on another talk task. This was mostly... this is mostly to get rid of the mystique so that I can clear the way for the end of the expedition when it comes to it. Not everyone is sympathetic to our aims, but if we have problems with our reputation, our disciple can probably smooth them over. And we are skilled in uncovering warded ways. We'll probably penetrate this warded door. We bear a great power of opening. We'll almost certainly shatter this warded door. Okay, let's try the Lodge of the Sage Knight again. Last night I visited the Lodge of the Sage Knight. My hostess manifested as an elegant woman with fashionably short hair and dark glasses. No, she admits, I don't need them any more than I need eyes. Allow me my sentimentalities. But you've come for knowledge, I expect. Here's a story I heard in my Carisham days. You're welcome to it. Only remember to visit me if you come to see the pilgrimage. Sorry, I need to remember to read them all the way. Right, back to... Again, we're just going to keep going to the White Door until we have more lore to work with. So, I'm going to slightly adjust the order in which I'm reading things. So maybe we'll put the Orchid Transfigurations ahead. Yeah, it's not that big of a change, but I'm going to work on that order. All doors must open as all lives must end. This door has found its end here today, and I prepared the text for study. It is not clear whether or not C.R.O.D., who is identified only by his initials, was in fact an initiate of the Obliviate Order of Immortal Adepts. He wrote in the 16th century, after the order, if he is to be believed, had passed the height of its power. Alright, the Leonine Tantra. In the most notorious translation of the Leonine Tantra, Ashley Phillips is listed as the translator, but their existence is explicitly denied in the prologue. This confusion is characteristic of books which mention the Great Hooded Princes. The Tantra describes elliptically the Great Hooded Princes and the multitudinous ways in which they influenced wars against foreign invaders of the land of the Great River, although in a sense they were also invaders. Right, tonight I sense an opportunity. Tonight I could attract attention if I cease to hold back, if I commit myself more fully. Tonight they'll notice that. If hunters found notoriety, they will try to use it to create or upgrade evidence. If they're meticulous, they'll always succeed. If they're erratic, they're more likely to fail, but they can occasionally create evidence even without notoriety. Oh, interesting. Oh yeah, nope, it's working now. So I felt all their eyes upon me. Afterwards, I received a gift from an admirer. A little too personal for me to feel comfortable, but I can sell it in the second-hand market. The stage awaits hot and clean and bare and bright. If I move the moves and step the steps and do what is required, they'll pay me. Okay, so we'll move on to Lockwood Fen right away. Again, we can always go to Karasham to do the to work with the Instar silent card, but I don't quite feel the need yet. Last night I dreamt of a blue silk pavilion overlooking the cloudy labyrinth of the Bounds. I listened to the mistress of this place speak of other visitors. The Suppression Bureau come here. Did you know that? I think they hope to recruit me as an ally, she snores derisively. After what they tried to do to Christopher. But their folly is your fortune. I will tell you something that may help you if the Bureau ever troubles you. Okay. I'm safe for now. My adversary has not enough evidence to bring a case against me, and they found no new clues. So, lucky me. We've got 6 seconds before Clovette's mission is done, and 35 seconds, or sorry, there's going to be another minute as well. But yeah, we'll probably talk to Dr. Redeem before we send her on another mission. Oh, nope, 6 seconds. Okay. Optimism is a spice which saves. Yeah, we'll let that tick down. We don't have a Season of Suspicion coming up, and we got a Course of the Heart. Now I can approach the white door through the Bounds. Now I can press my fingers to it, feel its chill, watch it swing open. As it opens, my mouth closes, tightens, heals over like a lost deformity. Around and about me is the cobalt light of the Mansis. Tonight they'll notice that. Lines can be created, not as children are created, nor as words are created, but as weapons are created. The Great Hooded Princes learnt to create lions from their spyings on the affairs of the hours, and not all lions now serve the Golden General. Alright, the Colonel's name. So, this is a big one for us. The Colonel has been many things in many ages. He is blind, he is deaf, he cannot be wounded, he cannot be denied. His names are as cunning as only the very old can be. So, in this case, what we've got is, so remember we needed a very substantial commission on Edge, and as it happens we've got, wait a minute. Oh yeah, no, it's 8, sorry. Yeah, sorry, we skipped a lore. Okay, so actually the Colonel's name has become more powerful than I can ever imagine. You know what? We're gonna switch this around a bit. We'll give Worry Detective this little seat in the aisle. Okay, let's. Yeah, we'll wait now for Dr. Redeem. Although obviously I've got something to use the work verb for now. I felt all their eyes upon me. Afterwards, I received a gift from an admirer. A little too personal for me to feel comfortable, but I can sell it on the second-hand market. Okay. So let's go take care of our Edge commission. And There we go. This may be useful for a commission. And we will get Clovette to deal with that notoriety. It's only got 2 minutes left on it, but it gives me a chance to use my followers for something. Oh, hang on. I haven't been using the study verb. So, The Orchid Transfigurations, Volume 3, Noon. The third volume of a compilation of quasi-Rosicrucian allegories, supposedly by Robert Flood. This is a later English translation. A long dialogue between the Mountain Mother and the Vigilant Storm describes the ways in which both mountains and storms end, and the protections they use against those ends. Okay. So for some reason, I waited and then sent Clovette to deal with my reputation. I really wonder, because I know that I just said that I wasn't going to do this, and then I wound up doing it anyway. Sometimes I wonder exactly what goes through my head when I play these things. The room is bleached and quiet. The chair. Okay, so actually, this is a great example of something. So, you know, immediately based on our other experiences, right? So there's no. Actually, come to think of it, okay, so there is a very, very small chance that we have not used Lantern to visit the Manses. So if you think of it, actually, is that possible? Yeah, because you can get to the wood through Moth. Anyways, so generally, I think there's there's a number of references here to Lantern that we've already picked up. Now, of course, we've got the Concursum Diaries. That's a suggestion already. But this is a great example in terms of saying, like, when it comes to the library, what are some of the things that we would associate with it? So the room is bleached and quiet. The chairs are pale wood. The table is topped with white marble. A low draft blows through the ill-fitting sea-facing casement. In winter, it must be insupportably cold. A white-painted glass case holds a shelf of books, wrapped oddly in coils of copper wire. So there are a couple, there's definitely a couple ways that you can go with this, right? So bleached and quiet room, to me, speaks to Lantern. On the other hand, there's also references to, cold. Now, I mean, winter, obviously, that's not a huge leap, right? Sometimes winter is just winter. And then there is referring to sea-facing casement, so our associations with the sea would normally be hard. A white-painted glass case holds a shelf of books wrapped oddly in coils of copper wire. And then, of course, actually, would copper be forge? I'm not sure. In any case, so what we're going to do now is, so we've got a few different references that we saw. Okay, actually, this is a big one. So some of the books are exotic 18th century pornography. Others are botanist journals. Some, however, have value for our studies. A yellowing note tucked into the spine of one reads, "Watch for me, JC." So JC is somebody that we've encountered and I believe has a direct winter aspect. So basically what we've got here, right, is that so we're dealing with things directly referenced in the in terms of the the descriptions. And we've got a few candidates. And again, it's not to say that there can't be sort of a little bit of everything present. But one way we might be able to sort of piece these things out would be, what are some of the items we find? Is there an influence that comes out of this? So for instance, here we've got the Concursum Diaries, so that's Lantern. Gildersleeve's Latin Grammar, so that doesn't necessarily direct us one way or the other. Shavenlock Tantra, so Moth. On Matthias and Amethyst Imago, Loss. Incidentally, we don't have Aramaic, so that's tricky for us. Those Who Do Not Sleep. It's a Fusine text, and in this case, from the title, I would guess that would be Heart. Sorry, I didn't set the alarm properly. But yeah, so I mean, again, is any of this enough to sort of crack the thing wide open? No. I at least can say, well, there's a Lantern book here, and there's no, so this is actually maybe another example that you would take would be, well, the fact that there is a Lantern book present, and that seems to be more supportive of an idea of, associating this library with Lantern. See, obviously it has to be because I didn't see anything winter present. And you know what, that makes sense right up until the time you see the reference to JC. And then of course that brings another kind of another wrinkle inside of it. And if you wanted, this would be an example. What I'm trying to do here is just connect to some of the things that I'd said before. This would maybe be one of these cases where if you were interested in this idea, it's like, okay, well, you know what? I've gone to this location a whole bunch of different times. I've read the text over and over again. But there's some references to things specifically now that I understand and I've seen referenced elsewhere, and what would be the case that I would make for one or the other. And again, like sometimes the answer is that it's none of the above, and that you shouldn't think of single locations being associated with one place. For me, that was something I needed to do for the networks article, because in the end you're going to have these clusters, and I thought it was really neat that there were these clusters associated with the different principles. And I mean, not surprising. That was kind of built that way because that's how I was analyzing it. But they did actually wind up fitting very well, even when they weren't directly referring to the aspect. So it would not be surprising to see Lantern appear in the Lantern cluster. But if you start seeing some things which you would normally associate with Lantern, which don't have that aspect to it, and they wind up being in the Lantern cluster, or at the very least you sort of see this closeness to that cluster, that becomes really interesting. That's kind of where you're like, oh, I might be onto something here. So in this particular case, if I found this really interesting, that would be a time where I'd sort of sit down with some paper. I'm like, okay, so here are the things that I've found. Here are some of the names that interest me. Here are ones that I think are important or kind of come up a couple of times. And then, again, whether you keep playing the game or whether you go and look through some of the other books, you have a different perspective, right? Now that you're looking for, maybe you just want to find out more about JC, right? I think a number of you know who this individual is, but why is it white? Why is it winter, right? And what happened? What made them the way that they are? There's maybe you want to go and do a biography or something. And instead you move from focusing on that library and instead start focusing on some of the people that are referenced inside of it. And I don't know, that's kind of the fun of this game, I think. Anyways, I'm a little over time, so let's go... actually, you know what? I can start Lockwood Fen at the start of the next stream, because that'll give me a chance to read the text, and then hopefully by the end of it, I'll be in a position to... I'll be in a position to, do the connections. So, sorry, I know this is a little bit of a scattered episode. I'm hoping that the internet... I know you hearing all the sounds of my phone in the background, so it does seem like at least the wireless is working, so hopefully the internet follows. But my apologies. I think the Monday ones are always a bit rougher, so I'll try to make sure that the next few are more polished. Tuesdays are don't have videos yet, so I will see you all Wednesday. Thank you very much for watching. If you've not yet done so, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's just down below, and if you'd like to get notifications for episodes when they become available, you can hit the bell beside. And of course, if you'd like to reach out and say hello, please feel free to leave a comment. If you like the video, you can also leave a like. And of course, these are things that help the videos get noticed, which I always appreciate. More importantly, they give me a chance to interact with all of you. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you in the next one.